Focus today, new financial supports for the food supply chain, right from the farm field to the processing plants in this country. The money announced today, $77 million for food processors to buy protective equipment and perhaps expand production ability during the pandemic. $125 million to help pork and beef producers who are producing more meat than can be marketed during the pandemic. That money will help farmers to some extent cover the costs of keeping those animals longer. And if there's more money needed, the Prime Minister said today the government will provide more money. For dairy farmers who produce too much milk these days and butter during the pandemic, the product is being thrown out in many cases. So the Prime Minister announcing today a food surplus program with $50 million in federal money to buy up potatoes, milk, butter, other foodstuffs, and provide it to agencies that do provide food to people who need it during the crisis. I'm assuming he's talking about food banks. So let's get some reaction. Is this what farmers had been asking for in this country? Seems to fall short from what they'd been proposing just in the last couple of weeks. Keith Currie is the Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. He's been listening to the Prime Minister's news conference today and this announcement about financial help for Canada's agri-food sector, and he joins me now. Mr. Currie, good to talk to you again, and thanks for being available this morning. Nice to see you.
You too as well, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Your organization had sounded a warning about looming food shortages in Canada if there wasn't more done to help the agri-food sector. You had been asking for, I think it was $2.6 billion in help for the agri-food sector across the sectors. How far do these measures just announced by the Prime Minister go in easing your concerns?
Well, we've been sounding the alarm bell for weeks now that our sector needs some immediate help, not only for producers to keep their heads above water now, but also to maintain that food production system well beyond COVID-19 ending. So working with our national commodities, we come up with the $2.6 billion in hurt to this point and looking for some financial program assistance because we've been telling the government for years now that the current suite of business risk management programs just don't work. So, we've been working closely with Minister Riboul's office. They've been very good to talk to and work along with us. And while we appreciate the monies offered, it does fall well short of what the actual asks are. And, we'll take it as a first step, but we certainly need a lot more recovery money than what was announced today to really help not just the beef and the pork sector and the dairy, but there's a lot of other sectors out there that are hurting right now too and need immediate help. So we're looking to continue those discussions to make sure that we get the support we need to make sure that we maintain this production right through this pandemic and beyond.
Okay, a couple of things to unpack there. So what what kind of a difference will the money announced today make? When you talk about a good first step, sometimes that can be a very small little first step or a sizable first step. Is this going to make a big difference for farmers? Or most of them going to look at this, and you're one of them, going to look at this and say, okay, thanks, but this isn't going to cut it?
Well, I think you summed it up perfectly. We have a lot of producers right now who, when you look at the livestock sector, the protein sector, their animals can't get to market. There's been quite a slowing down and almost stoppage of the processing side, the capacity in the processors. We understand why, but that's meant back up on the farm. And so when you have animals that you have scheduled to market, that's income not coming in. You're continuing to feed those cattle. In some cases, it's a lot more expense on top of regular feeding. You have no cash flow. We got bills to pay. We got mortgages to pay. 2019 was a very tough year for a lot of farmers for a number of different reasons, including geopolitical reasons that were not their fault. So they're already stressed financially. So increasing loans may not be an option or even a hole they can climb out of. So they really do need that financial support right now to maintain payroll of employees and make sure that their operations can stay functional. So as we get through COVID-19, we're able to come out on the other side. Because if we start depopulating these herds and flocks right now, you can't just flip a switch and start that production up again on farm right away. It takes years, months to do that. So that's why we're looking for the support for farmers to keep their heads above water right now.
Right. Tell me about that. That's for those of us who know less than you about farming. Keith Currie, when you talk about the possibility of depopulating herds, tell me what that means.
Well, for cattle, the cattlemen have been asking for a set-aside program, very similar to what was done during the BSE period in 2003, where they were paid a dollar figure per head to keep cattle on farm, keep them on maintenance feed until such time that processing would open up for them. And they've been asking for that similar program now, as I mentioned. But when you're talking about animals that are shorter term to market, such as pork or poultry, for example, you can only keep them on farm so long until business decisions have to be made on what to do with those animals. So the last thing we want to do is start depopulating or euthanasia. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully these new measures announced for the processing side to have more protective equipment and barriers in place so that the lines can keep moving will be helpful and ease that stress on the loading up of livestock on farm.
Yeah, didn't hear anything, and that was pointed out in the question and answer session with the Prime Minister. Anything about support for grain farmers or fruit and vegetable farmers? Didn't hear any plans for ensuring there are enough workers to harvest the fruits and vegetables later this season. You concerned about that?
Very concerned, and especially if we look at sectors like equine, the horse industry is really suffering right now. Mushrooms, ornamentals are close to $1 billion in losses at this point. There's big compost piles out behind greenhouses now because there's no avenues for them to sell their product. The Easter through Mother's Day period is about 60% of their sales. So some of the hort production is down as much as 50% of normal. And are they going to have the labor there in the fall to get it harvested? So these are all very real concerns that we have right now, and the financial stress on a lot of people is concerning. And it's about what we can do as I mentioned, to maintain us through this period. But there's an opportunity for agriculture to really have an economic driver ability coming out of COVID-19, when a lot of industries will be slow to recover. Agriculture is one that's ready to go hit the ground running if we can maintain the support now.
A couple things to deal with just before we let you go. You've been making, you and I have talked a number of times about concerns that farmers have and some of the tough times farmers have been dealing with, and you've been dealing with, as you say, the Agriculture Minister's office for months, even before the pandemic hit, talking about supports for farmers. And I guess I'm wondering how you feel as you watch money go out the door to many other sectors and many other parts of the economy that need the help, and yet this is a first pass at helping the agri-food sector, but as we've heard in your concern, seems like not a whole lot. I'm wondering whether you think there's a disconnect between what you need and are asking for, and how seriously the government seems to take your situation.
I guess that depends on how long this program is for me to answer that question. But certainly, I think if you look at the election results of last fall, we associate the West with being not happy with this current government. But if you look at the political landscape, it's rural Canada and a real disconnect with this government and what agriculture means to the economy. When you're talking about $112 billion annually and jobs, it's really significant, and it's a consistent driver of the economy. With respect to the announcements that have been announced so far, I mean, certainly we want this government to spend every penny they need to on the healthcare system to make sure that we have that full support. But we look at food security as basically second in line. And I don't begrudge all the money going out to cover EI and the CERB payments to make sure people can pay bills and feed their families and pay their rent. And I certainly don't have a problem with the support of students or culture and heritage, but it's a little disheartening when we're at the bottom of the pile and really don't get any recognition of the need that's in an industry that really will be supporting the economy in the very near future post COVID-19. And I think that's a reflection of an urban-centric government that just doesn't understand the industry and the impact of it.
A couple of quick things to finish. Didn't hear much about, we heard something about temporary foreign workers and the need, but we know the government also has a plan that's trying to encourage young people to take up some of the jobs that farmers are looking for as we get heavily into the season here. And I guess how you feel about that? Is the government on the right track trying to get students, for instance, to work on farms? Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is, farm labor is actually skilled labor, and can anybody do it? And if you're a student looking to do it, are farmers welcoming that approach or concerned about it?
A little bit of both. Certainly, we do welcome any additional labor that's available for us to use. And you're right, Peter, that aspect of just showing up and anybody can work on the farm is really almost a fallacy. It is very skilled labor in a lot of cases, technologically advanced. We are willing to train as much as we can possibly train. We do have to respect the social distancing, the protocols that are still in place, but certainly we're not opposed to people showing up. We do have labor jobs available as well, but talk to your local farmer or your processor and what kind of opportunities are there. I know many provincial organizations are trying to work with the provincial governments to pool resources to make sure that we can job match and have the right kind of work lined up for people coming forward. But it's a catch-22. We want the work, but we got to make sure we have the right kind of help.
All right, so to close off our conversation, Keith Currie, good first step, but not nearly enough for what farmers need. Fair assessment of your response today?
Yeah, I think so, Peter. I mean, we do appreciate the government looking to help us out, but we've been asking from basically from the beginning for support, and we put out almost 3 weeks ago our 2.6 billion acts. That was for the herd to date, and this is just simply not recognizing the need in the sector, and it could be devastating long term.
All right, Keith Currie, thanks for your time again today, and good luck with everything you're going to be facing. And we Canadians know the contributions you make to the economy, and we see it every day at the store. So appreciate your ongoing commitment to the cause, and I hope everything turns out well for you. Take care.
Okay, thank you, Peter.